A minute. Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Lynn Woodland. This is the year-long Miracles course. And every single week is a little bit of a different slant on how to live a miraculous life. So it's a little bit of a modern day mystery school. It's not based on A Course in Miracles. It's based, as many people ask, that's why I mention it. It's based on my own personal exploration of what gives rise to miraculous experience. This is pretty much what I've been doing for the last 50 years and a little bit. I'm really old. And I've actually written a couple of books about miracles. The first one's called Holding a Butterfly. And that actually is a miracle experiment that as you just open it up and start reading from chapter 1, you become engaged in a miracle experiment where you're part of it. You're not reading about it. You are in it. And I have some people who tell me that they read the book once a year now because every time they read it, all these miraculous things start happening. The second book is called The Breakthrough Point, a spiritual activist guide to thriving in a modern world. And that's actually also a miracle experiment that picks up with where the first one left off. However, it's put in the context of the times we're in. And I finished writing it about 10 years ago. And oh my gosh, it's more relevant today than it was then. It's kind of scary. But if you feel any angst about the world, oh my God, the world is falling apart, this is a good book to read because it shows the other side of that really is a consequence of an evolutionary leap we're in the process of taking as a species, and what we can do about it to ride that wave of evolution rather than just being sucked in and tumbled around and, probably know what I'm talking about. So that's a little bit about me. This course, for anyone who isn't aware, I've been teaching it for about 20 years. I now do it as my own volunteer service on behalf of a handful of nonprofit spiritual centers. That's how I would think almost everybody here got here. And I asked that rather than donating money to me for this class, which is how I used to offer it, you go directly to the spiritual center that got you here and make a donation for every class you attend, whether you're attending live or virtually. If you're making up a class and going to the website, there's a hidden page that goes along with every single live class here that has a lot of written materials in addition to this work we're doing tonight. So every session, this whole course is set into the context of the 4 seasons. And we're in the fall now. We're getting toward the end of fall. In fact, these next 2 sessions are going to end the fall quarter. And we're going to go into a whole nother focus for the spiritual content. The 4 seasons, they make such a great template for the whole of a growing cycle. And right now, we're getting near the end of a month that was dedicated to really letting go. I mean, think of what happens in the natural world, where all the greenery, the growing of summer and spring, they all die away. And what's left are the seeds that get harvested, the essence. So that's where we are now. It's about letting go, making space for what's important. We've also done a lot of work with descending into darkness. You know, this whole quarter has been dedicated to the transformative process of healing and of purification and of looking at our own shadows, of self-scrutiny, of letting go of the part of the ego that tries to hang on from a place of fear rather than a place of inner knowing and our God wisdom. And this work of fall, which I think is the hardest seasons, the hardest quarter, the work we do here, and you guys have really hung in there, a lot of you, like champs. You've really hung in to do this work. It creates the foundation for the next month's experience of spiritual rebirth, which is really more of a joyous month. And the culmination of this work requires a lot of self-honesty as we address things that compromise the impeccability of our integrity, as well as things that keep us separate and powerless. You know, like this topic is not as much fun as what we do 6 months away from now. We deal with abundance and prosperity and receiving and letting it all in. Now we have to look at our shadow. Really? We have to go there, and our integrity. Really? I don't want to do that. I'll just come back for abundance. Thank you. However, if we don't do this work, we get in our own way. We don't do the work that ultimately keeps us separate, that keeps us powerless, that keeps us in a place of spinning wheels so that we may have conscious intentions, but we never get to them. We just stay stalled. So, okay, here we go. This is the hard part, everybody. I want to begin tonight by talking about judgment. Aren't we all a little bit judgy? Yeah, I know. I know I am. It's through judgment that we define the world as good or bad, right or wrong. And judgment creates separateness. It's not to be confused with the faculty of discernment. It's through discernment that we have clear vision. It's discernment that guides us not to rely on someone whose behavior is untrustworthy, but it's judgment that declares the same person bad, and maybe ourselves as maybe a little bit more, superior to them. And it's judgment that justifies withholding compassion and forgiveness and love. It's inherent in judgment is an attachment to being right that isn't present with just the neutral clarity of discernment. And, face it, there is something really compelling about being right that can be hard to let go of. Yet being right, which always means proving someone else wrong, is by its very nature antithetical to true well-being and inner peace. As we make someone else wrong, we strengthen our experience of alienation. We expend more energy executing our defense, proving why we're right and they're wrong. We spend more energy on that than simply creating our joy. So judgment effectively separates us from the power of love and joy and well-being. And sadly, the whole choice to cling to that limited satisfaction of being right is one we tend to make when we don't quite believe in the possibility of true happiness for ourselves. We think, well, I can't really have the kind of happiness my heart longs for, so I'll settle for just being right. I'm right and you're wrong. That we kind of settle for that. It can feel like fun in the moment. I mean, who hasn't felt a little of that, when you've sent a really pithy little Facebook response to somebody's like, me, 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 me. Well, me, you know. It is so easy to be self-righteous these days. Let me tell you, very easy. Living life without judgment, without the filter of right and wrong, it really does require a paradigm shift in perspective. When we feel attached to our position of rightness and to another's wrongness, we can be certain that there is a bigger picture that exists. Is a picture where joining, where commonality and healing can be found. I know I don't post on Facebook a lot, but when I do, I'm not good at doing the really short little memes that everybody wants to share. I post something that's this long. But a lot of my message hasn't been about, well, I'm right and you're wrong. It's been about, well, look, this is why we're both on the same side, even though there's a lot of me that feels like, well, I'm right and you're wrong. That's a lot juicier in my being, I have to admit. But what I want to put out to the world is a place where we can find commonality, that a lot of people's bickering, if you take it back further and further and further, is we're all on the same side. We all have a lot of the same needs, same commonality. If anybody wants to see what I've been writing, just send me a friend request on Facebook. I know a lot of people aren't on there anymore, but go put up a profile for your cat. I know some people have been doing that. And you can still be anonymous and see what people are up to. So joining commonality, healing through that. And this doesn't mean giving in or letting go of being true to our own values. Shifting to a broader paradigm means expanding to include more than one view, not sacrificing a view that feels, true to you. Put in more simplistic terms, it's kind of like that old story of the 6 blind men feeling up the elephant and encountering very different parts of that elephant and coming up with radically different and incomplete stories about what an elephant is. And each one found a piece of truth, but none of them had true understanding and none of them agreed. And when we're attached to a position and hold it to be the truth to the exclusion of other truths, we become just as blind. So letting go of judgment allows us to find the bigger picture that can simultaneously embrace different perspectives of truth, even realities that are so different they seem mutually exclusive. And as our perspective continues to expand, ultimately, these seeming paradoxes become understandable parts of a cohesive whole, just as radically different pieces all combine to make a perfectly coherent elephant. So a first step toward this paradigm shift is being willing to believe, especially in times of self-righteousness, that the other position and your own have some validity, that neither is wrong, that there's some way of understanding that other's position where you get it. And the idea that nothing is wrong really can bring out the self-righteous indignation in the best of us. It's so easy to think of wrong things. What about children dying? What about abusive parents? What about murder? What about Hitler? Remember, when we go back to our spiritual reality, that we are more than our physical body, as we touched upon last month. And consequently, if we're not our spiritual body, and we are spiritual, we are essence, we are energy, that means that at the truest level, we are beyond physical harm. And if we start looking at things from that perspective, it changes the nature of, wrong things. If tragic occurrences and abusive acts, even on the scale of Hitler, at the deepest level of truth do no harm, then what do? Maybe at a spiritual level, we step in to play certain roles in relation to one another, even in relation to the whole human species, to help us all ultimately see through the illusions of fear to the truth of love. And of course, letting go of the frame of right and wrong doesn't mean that we let go of our standards of behavior. We don't need to call child abuse good because we've stopped focusing on its wrongness. And we'd still be just as adamant about protecting children from abusive experiences. The difference is that when we replace self-righteous anger with compassion for both the victim and the victimizer, we don't just stop a hurtful act. We create miracles. Like the real life story of a rabbi. His name was Rabbi Weiser. And this is some years back. He befriended the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, who was trying to intimidate him out of town. Like the rabbi had just moved to town with his family. And this Klansman did not want this Jew in his neighborhood, in his community, in his town, and was being pretty nasty. And now this particular Klansman happened to be disabled. And the rabbi, instead of fighting back in some way, instead of showing fear, he knew this guy was disabled. And he reached out to him and he asked him if he needed a ride to the grocery store. I mean, how many people would do that? The person who's trying to intimidate you out of town, you reach back and say, well, do you need a ride to the grocery store? I can help you with that. And the Klansman accepted. And this started a friendship between the two of them that ultimately became so deep that the Klansman wound up living the last years of his life in the rabbi's home. He became a member of the rabbi's family, and they basically nursed him in his final years. Wow. I mean, just take that in. Wow, how many of us could do that? Think how powerful that was. Now, another example of the power of compassion is one from Carolyn Miller's book called Creating Miracles. And I recommend this book all the time. It's a collection of true miracle stories. It came out a while ago. It's not a new book. One of the stories is of a former Army MP named John who stopped a man as he was rampaging through a bar and he was slashing at people with a metal pipe. And, this guy's a burly MP. You'd think he'd just resort to his self-defense skills. But instead of resorting to force, this guy, and now I'll just quote from the book, John gazed steadily into the madman's eyes and said with great compassion, "You must be in terrible pain to do a thing like this." End of quote. And in moments, the attacker had surrendered his weapon and was weeping in John's arms. He'd been seen with an open heart. And quite simply, when we stop believing that someone is bad, and instead see them through the eyes of love, we really do call forth their higher self, their higher behavior. And as we stop believing someone's damaged, we give energy to the part of that person that's always intact, that has always been intact. And we support their healing. We call it forth. And as we stop believing ourselves to be victims, we stop attracting abusive treatment. Seeing the bigger picture of reality means, often juggling some mind-bending paradoxes. It means having compassion for a person's pain while still having the faith in the part of them that's whole and undamaged. So it doesn't mean dismissing someone's pain, like, oh, don't take it seriously. You're a spiritual being. You're in horrible pain. Don't take it. That's not the way to go. But to be able to really hear and understand and feel heartfelt compassion for someone's pain, like, I know that must be really hard. And at the same time, see the part of them that's whole and undamaged, means seeing two different sides at once. It means seeing the good in someone while saying no to their abusive behavior. It means accepting our power to create our own reality at the same time that we surrender to a higher power. Like, we are creators, but we also surrender to something bigger than our conscious mind, our ego. So we've talked about that paradox a lot. And this is yet one more way to work with it. And I want to just shift directions a bit now, because in this whole discussion of letting go of right and wrong, I want to say a little bit about the power of saying, I'm sorry. In the book, Peace Pilgrim, Her Life and Her Work in Her Own Words, another book I recommend here over and over and over again. If you've never taken a look at it, I so recommend it. It's the kind of book to just leave by your bedside. You can open it up anywhere, just read a little snippet. It's so inspiring. She really was an evolved being, a true American saint, not Catholic, so she was never sainted, but a true saint, I think. And I often tell stories from this book, because this book is just a compilation of her lectures, of her talks with people. And she told of a man who was very upset to hear that she was going to be speaking at his church. And he'd seen her picture in the paper. And you can maybe see Bill has the cover of the book on here. And you can see she's kind of scruffy looking. She just had one set of clothes, little jersey, sweats, that she wore everywhere all the time. And he was horrified by her scruffiness and complained to his minister and his other congregation members, like, why is she coming to our church? She looks like a homeless lady. She was just very upset. He was getting into his little bit judgy. And someone told Peace Pilgrim about this man's distress. And right away, she asked for his phone number so she could call him up. And this is the conversation they had in her own words. I'm quoting from the book. "This is Peace Pilgrim calling," I said. I could hear him gasp, "Ah!" Afterward, he told me he thought I'd called to bawl him out. I said, "I've called to apologize to you because evidently I must have done something to offend you, since without even knowing me, you have been apprehensive about my speaking at your church. Therefore, I feel I must somehow owe you an apology, and I have called to apologize." do you know the man was in tears before that conversation was over? And now we're friends. He corresponded with me afterward. Yes, the law of love works. End of quote. There she is, Peace Pilgrim. I was fortunate enough to meet Peace Pilgrim twice as a pretty young child. She was mesmerizing. She had an aura about her. She was quite fabulous. But faced with a similar situation, how much easier would it be for most of us to maybe take offense with that complaining parishioner, to see him in the wrong and respond in nearly any way other than by apologizing? Yet these words were so powerful. Aren't you just sure this man was transformed? That something in him really changed with that simple, I apologize. And I once witnessed this power myself, the power of the words, I'm sorry, to bring healing to a whole group around just the incredibly deep roots, deep wounds of racial pain, racism. Before COVID hit and I did things in person, for decades, I used to do 5-day-long intensives. And I grew up in Baltimore, so I led a lot of these in Baltimore. And the racial balance of this particular 5-day intensive was about 80% African American, about 20% white, because Baltimore is a predominantly African American city. So that kind of balance was not unusual. Now, when I moved to Minneapolis, it was pretty usual to see a New Thought spiritual group be mostly white, with a very small smattering of people of color. But this was not that unusual for my Baltimore groups. And in this particular 5-day intensive, the issue of racism became a theme that we talked about, we hashed out, we debated with a lot of emotion throughout the whole workshop. And the Black members of the group voiced their anger, their pain, their bitterness toward white culture in a way that really doesn't happen in groups that are predominantly white. At least I've never seen it happen. Never. I mean, now that I've moved to Florida, I'm in a New Thought church that has a little bit of a better balance, but still, it's predominantly white. There's some things that don't quite get talked about. But in this particular group, white people were definitely the minority, which was kind of a new experience for a lot of those folks. And on the last day of our time together, there was a very emotional exchange between a Black and a white member of the group. Both were crying as they were talking about how really the pain of racism had affected each of them, the white person and the Black person. And other people in the room were crying as they listened. It was just very emotional. And in the midst of this sharing, another Black woman suddenly began sobbing uncontrollably, loudly, just completely overcome. I mean, it stopped everyone. We just stopped and just gave her all the attention. When she could speak again, she told us what had happened to trigger her outburst. There was a white woman sitting next to her who had just turned to her with tears in her eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry." It was so emotional. It's almost hard for me to, this was about 35 years ago. It still brings up a lot of emotion for me to tell it. But the Black woman said she'd been waiting her whole life to hear a white person say those words. related to race. And as she spoke, others began to cry. Everybody just fell into each other's arms, just very literally sobbing. And in that instant, we transcended the lines of racial separateness and were able to love one another, and not in a colorblind way that says, well, I don't see race. I just love people. I just see the human family, because that often is a way of sweeping a lot under the rug, especially for white people. It's a way of sweeping under the rug. Well, I've grown up with a whole lot of entitlement that you never had. My parents could do things that your parents never could. I mean, when I think of it for myself, my parents could take me on the all-American road trip vacation. The parents of my close friend, my Black friend, they couldn't do that. They had to consult a book to see where it was safe to travel. There are so many things that were different in the way we were raised, in just our family, just a generation, 2 generations. So many things that when white people say, oh, I don't see color, it's often a way of saying, I don't want to see all that. That difference just makes me really uncomfortable. That's why in Florida, so there's an awful lot of books getting banned right now that might make white kids, uncomfortable. But we were in this place where we saw it all. The woman who apologized wasn't overly racist. And she could have argued that she wasn't responsible for 100 years of slavery and racial oppression and inequality and had nothing to apologize for. Yet in that moment, she was able to speak in a voice that felt representative of the whole white race by taking responsibility for her own shadow and for the entitlement that she inherited and took for granted. She was saying, I'm sorry for all of that inequity that she enjoyed every day. And her I'm sorry simply said, I see in myself a piece of the oppressor, and I'm deeply sorry for the pain it's caused. It's the pain of acknowledging our disowned shadow. And we were all able, white people were able to say, okay, I own it, and I love you, and I'm sorry. And Black people could say, yes, I'm angry, and thank you for your apology. I'm still angry, and I love you. I love you. We can all love each other in spite all of this that has happened and is still there. That's how we start healing it for real. That's how we start healing it, where we don't deny it, we acknowledge it, we recognize all of it, and we still find love. That's how we start to truly heal it. And it's what makes saying I'm sorry so difficult. It's about acknowledging our disowned shadow. A stance of defensive self-righteousness allows us to avoid acknowledging something really repugnant about ourselves. But when we let this go and see that kernel of truth in any attack made against us, we suddenly have less to defend. We're no longer wasting energy hiding our deepest secret, that we're flawed, that we're human. We've all got a shadow. And we gain incredible power to transform our situation. And this is as true between, family members, spouses, friends, coworkers, individuals, as it is between groups of people. So next time you feel stuck in a standoff of disagreement, you find yourself defending your position, instead of that, stop and just go silent and simply listen to the other person. Don't interrupt as you allow them to speak. Instead of planning your next response, really hear what they're saying. Because just about every side of a disagreement has at least a kernel of truth. So find this kernel in the other person's position and validate it. And you'll be amazed at how quickly this takes the steam out of a fight. It opens up new possibilities for healing. It just opens it up. Miracles can happen. And I want to go into the spiritual work tonight. There's a bit more about honesty, telling the truth. It's in the written materials. But right now, I want to go a little deeper. I want to, when it's hard to confront our differences face to face because they become like headbutt to headbutt. Really, a more powerful way to start some kind of conversation can be through talking to someone's higher self. And the higher self conversation, I've mentioned this here before, and it's when we go into a meditative state and we really go deep enough so that we feel in touch with our higher self. And this isn't when the other person is physically present. It's when they're not present, because then ego triggers ego and it all starts again. This is when that person isn't present, when we first tap into our highest, the highest in us. And then we imagine connecting with the highest in the other. And we speak everything that we need to get out in the open. And it's often by conversing at this level, the opportunity will soon arise to speak face to face in a way that's healing. Sometimes, if you've been keeping secrets from another and you don't know how to share them, secrets can be very toxic. There's more I talk about in the written materials. Keeping secrets can really hurt us, literally, physically. They can be read by the body as something very toxic. And on the other hand, just dumping a big secret that maybe the other person isn't ready to hear, that isn't always a fair thing either. I sometimes get the question, should I tell my spouse that I had an affair some years back? Well, on one level, because we're also connected in spirit, in the one mind, when we lie to another person, that person knows on some level. There's a gut feeling. Even if we want to deny the gut feeling, we have it. We know when somebody's not telling the truth. We may have learned a lot of coping mechanisms to disconnect from that gut feeling. A lot of our work here over many months, over the year, is reconnecting with what we have taught ourselves not to listen to. But there is always that connection where we know the truth. If we don't listen to it, we get depressed, we get sick, we doubt ourselves. But we always know when someone's not telling the truth. So if we are that person who's not telling the truth, what do? Rather than, like I said, the big dump that the person may or may not be ready for, start it out in spirit. Speak everything that hasn't been shared. And really invite your higher selves to come together to invite the highest possible outcome for both of you, the highest resolution of separateness. Allow that to happen in an easy and healing way. And keep doing that until something really unfolds and becomes very clear at more of the in-person level. I've seen this have incredible results. I think I've mentioned this before here. There was once a woman in my workshop, another 5-day intensive, in fact, and she had been estranged from her mother for a long time. She formed the intention that she was going to reach out to her mother to resolve the conflict, to get back together in love. And she did this in spirit, connecting first. She did that in the workshop and when she went home at night between sessions. And she decided as soon as the workshop was over, she was going to reach out to her mom and call her up. And she didn't get the chance because before the workshop was over, her mom reached out to her first with the same intention. And they were able to heal a long time divide. So we're going to do this. We're going to do this exercise where just take a moment now and get comfortable in your seat and close your eyes and take some deep breaths. Inhale deeply. And exhale just as deeply. And just take a moment to still your thoughts and go into a peaceful, quiet state of mind. And just let your awareness expand to include your higher self. The beautiful, radiant being of light that is your true self. The part of you that's always whole, perfect, undisturbed by the ripples of human experience, by all the issues, the ups and downs. Just go to that place that exists beyond there. And bring to mind a relationship in your life where there's divisive energy, where there is that energy of right and wrong. It may be someone who you feel has hurt you. Maybe a relationship where you're still attached to being right. It could be someone who feels hurt by you. And one, or even both of you, believe that you are the one in the wrong. It could be someone from whom you're withholding a truth that they deserve to know. And if there's more than one, allow one of the group to step forward. And just as you bring only your highest, wisest self to this meeting, So are you now experiencing the higher self of this person? You might recognize familiar personality traits, yet all the illusions of the physical realm have fallen away. So any struggle or pain or misunderstanding that may have characterized your human relationship are all absent. And only love ties you together now. And a deep desire to serve one another's highest good. So just take a moment to greet this being, both the familiar person you know and the totality of the soul you may not readily see in the context of your human relationship. You are just with a magnificent spiritual being right now, as we all are, and share whatever you've been unable to share face to face, be it feelings of anger and hurt, or secrets, untruths, apologies, or any kind of conversation you've been afraid to have directly. And if you've never acknowledged the kernel of truth in this person's position, just do it now after speaking your message. Imagine the response that comes from this person's higher self. Just allow a dialogue to happen. And it's okay if you feel like you're just making it up, because that's often how our intuitive, even our psychic skills start to emerge through our imagination. And just continue to dialogue in this way till it feels complete, or at least complete for now, because you can always go back. Ask this person's higher self to work with yours, starting now and in an ongoing way, to create peace and harmony between the two of you in the highest possible way. And let yourself see through any conflicts, limitations, or dramas that your personalities may have enacted. You see this person as a soul with their own lessons to learn. And know that at the spiritual realm, the conflicts and separateness of the physical level don't exist. And there is never any intention to do harm or withhold love between souls. There's just agreements to enact roles, to learn lessons, to help each other learn even from difficult relationships. And from this expanded perspective, you can see that even the most challenging experiences and relationships have offered blessings in disguise, helping us to deepen, to develop strengths, to add facets and brilliance to our soul, even when our personality may not understand it at the time. So just be aware of how you've been enriched by this other soul, and take a moment to just offer thanks for whatever role this being is playing in your life lessons. And then take a moment to just bring the visit to a completion for now. Take some deep breaths to bring yourself all the way back into your body, back to a normal waking state. Come back feeling refreshed, awake, alert. So I'll open it up for sharing. As I said, there are written materials plus a recording of the live class that are available that go with each one of these lessons. And to find it, you go to my website, you go to the menu bar and look for the Miracles course option. You click on that, takes you down. You'll see months of the year. Bill, are we looking for the third or the fourth month or week of the month? I'm sorry. You go to the menu option. You'll look for the Miracles course. That takes you to a drop-down menu that shows the months of the year. We're a little out of order at this time, partly because October had 5 Wednesdays, not just 4, partly because we're switching the 3rd week and the 4th because of where Thanksgiving falls. So, do you have the week that people should be looking for? The title is, I gave you that. Oh, let me see. Yes. Okay, so you're looking for the 3rd week in November. You're clicking on that, and then it requires a code. Could you share the code people need to type in, Bill? It's too small for me to see if you have it up somewhere. Do you have that? Okay. All right. Can you speak it out loud too? I can hear you. We could all hear you. 39, capital M, capital A. And if you missed any of November and want to go back, do the same thing, but look for either the 1st or 2nd week. And the 1st week of November, you would type in the code 41, capital O, capital R. The 2nd week is the number 42, capital P, capital I. And again, do give a donation to whatever spiritual center got you here. It's important. I do have an opening or two in my Tuesday monthly class. If that's something anyone here would be interested in, I will send you information about it. It's a more committed group. It does require an RSVP to stay a part of because it's space limited. It's people who are committing to get to know each other over time. It's a 2-hour class. A lot more personal sharing that we do here. Anyone interested, just send me an email and I'll tell you more about it. So at this point, I want to open it up for sharing. And that would include anyone who didn't get a reading earlier and would like one, or anyone who would like to share anything that came up from the work we did tonight. Anyone who feels complete and is like,